Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, Engage, Motivate, Reward, Repeat, the proven tactic for long-term safe behavior. This event, brought to you by ISHN Magazine, is sponsored by All-Star Incentive Marketing. I'm your moderator, Dave Johnson, editor of ISHN, and I thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today, our presenter is Mr. Brian Gallup. Mr. Gallup is president of All-Star Incentive Marketing and a member of the American Society of Safety Engineers. He is one of only 35 certified professionals of incentive marketing and the former president of the Incentive Technology Council. All-Star Incentive Marketing is a 40-plus-year-old company, one of the nation's top suppliers of safety recognition and rewards programs, and a past winner of the Incentive Marketing Association's Circle of Excellence Award for Best Safety Incentive Program. I'm excited to turn it over to today's.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you all for being here. It was a very well-received topic. We had over 500 people registered for this presentation, so you're in good company along with all your other safety professionals. Engage, motivate, reward, repeat. Repeat probably being the most operative word here, and we'll get into that as I go through the presentation. Engagement and safety. This image is basically meant to convey their flip sides of the same coin. As engagement goes, safety goes, and vice versa. I don't think it's something that necessarily leaps to mind for most safety professionals in your daily life, but by the time this presentation is done, it's my sincere hope that you do see the connection and how strong that connection actually is. The simple graphic on the right-hand side, engagement and safety, again, there's a direct correlation between safety and engagement. The greater the engagement, employee engagement, the greater the safety performance. It's a compass. It's in terms of what we're going to explore, I'm going to talk about the compass that is customer loyalty, and I'll explain the connection between customer loyalty concepts and safety and recognition rewards. The state of worker engagement, safety and wellness connection, the connection between the two. Social media, there's no escaping it, and we need to talk about how it relates to what we do. We'll look at some case studies, some applications, some engagement strategies, and talk about the proper deployment of a recognition rewards program. So customer loyalty, I know it's a little strange. Why am I talking about customer loyalty at a safety presentation? There's a lot to be learned here from these programs. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I'm talking strictly about the loyalty side of this industry. And I wanted to make this personal too. So what you're looking at here are actual examples from my own life. That picture up top, and I know it's not very large, but you kind of get the essence. It's a gas station. That's the Stop and Shop gas station a couple miles down the road from my house where my wife shops for gas. Okay, she goes to Stop and Shop, which is a local grocery store. She earns discounts off of her gas purchases, and she comes home to me and she brags that she just filled up her tank for $2.29 a gallon. Okay, it generates tremendous loyalty for her to shop for groceries in that store. In the middle of the page, you see an email, and that email is actually from my credit card company, and my credit card company, specifically Capital One, sends me emails periodically to remind me how many points I have and what I can use and what those points for, what I can actually purchase with them or redeem them for, which is everything from tangible goods to gift cards to take your pick. Okay, right on top of that actually is a card from Mohegan Sun. Mohegan Sun is a local casino out here in Connecticut. I'm in Massachusetts, but it's not that far down the road. There are several casinos in the area, and Mohegan Sun and all the other local casinos give me a card and give me points based on my trips to the property. And with those points or with the prizes that they offer me, they try to generate a more loyal customer who will come back to them more frequently. And at the bottom left there, you see my Subway card. I actually got a free sandwich late last week. Another week's worth of buying sandwiches there, I'll probably get another free sandwich. What's the point? The point is these programs are everywhere. I'm sure you've seen them in your life in many different places as well. In fact, the average U.S. household is at about 18 such loyalty programs. And the fact that they exist and the fact that they motivate our behavior as consumers, there's something to be learned in that as we actually look at our safety-sensitive workforce as well. So here are some other screenshots, some other loyalty programs that might ring true to you, things that you might be involved in. The one on the bottom left, the American Airlines Advantage program, this one is particularly interesting to me. Just as a quick aside, American Airlines 4 or 5 years ago, when they were in particularly bad straits, at one point an analyst had valued the value of their awards program somewhere around $6 billion, and the value of the entire airline itself was less than that. So the rewards program was worth more than the entire airline. And the reason is simply this. There were 40 million people in the American Airlines Advantage program, and it's 40 million people who had given American Airlines permission to market to them. Okay, and that permission to be marketed to, that bidirectional communication, is enormously important, not just for American Airlines, but at the bottom of every American Airlines Advantage email to you or someone else in that program, that might have been an offer for a hotel stay or Hertz rental car. And of course, that makes that resale space very valuable. Again, I'll bring this back home to what it means to safety in a minute, but I want to just make sure that this point is clear. And right in the middle of the screen, American Express. There's truly, in my words, in my world anyway, no reason for anybody to have an American Express program, other than the fact that American Express has the most well-known, richest rewards program. Otherwise, they're the most expensive credit card on the market. They do fraud protection, but so do the others. And the majority, frankly, other than paying for their own ivory towers, the majority of the dollars in those programs and where they go, and the fact that most retailers pay 3 or 4% to use the card, is going into the rewards program. They have extremely loyal customers. So a quick question. There's going to be 2 or 3 poll questions throughout the presentation. I want to give everyone on the phone a chance to see how their fellow safety professionals view these things as well. First question is this, and go ahead and click as soon as you see the answer that makes the most sense to you. How frequently do you or others in your family participate in loyalty programs? And again, if you feel like you're completely outside that realm, you can answer, maybe in using a spouse's performance within a program. I see the answers pouring in here real quickly, so I'm just going to give it another second or two, and before I push the results, and show you what most people think. Your choices there every day, several times a week. Do you think you're only in there once a week, once a month, or a few times a year? And again, we've got some pretty good feedback here, so I'm going to go ahead and send it. So it looks like several times per week is the #1 answer. Most people recognizing several times per week, even 7% saying every day. And I think, frankly, it's probably more of us that are in there every day, whether we know it or not. Again, between our gas points and our airline miles and our grocery stores and our shopping malls, take your pick. So we get it, right? We're participants in these programs. Everybody likes something for nothing, whether it's the airline miles and a free flight or a free upgrade or the next free sandwich. Okay, if we're motivated by these things, your safety professionals can also be motivated by similar types of engagement tactics, and that's really what we want to talk about. One study that may interest you, and you can get it from me. We'd be happy to send it to you after the fact. It's a fairly long study. I think it's in the 60 to 70 page length range, but you should check out the American Workplace, or the State of the American Workplace, which is by Gallup. What is it about the human condition that enables the multi-billion-dollar customer loyalty industry? That's sort of the question that I'm asking here. And is there any reason to believe that the people working for you are somehow different? If they're not, and I would represent that they're not, they're motivated in many of the same ways, particularly the younger ones, frankly, then you need to be reacting to that and getting the most bang for your buck when it comes to creating programs. So drilling down on this State of the American Workplace study for a second, Gallup found, and this is an exact quote from the piece, and really probably the most simplistic but easy to understand way as to what they're driving at. Managers should know that every interaction with an employee has the potential to influence his or her engagement and inspire discretionary effort, right? And I underlined a few words there. Interaction, every interaction, influence, engagement, and effort. It really is the crux of the situation, which is that every time you engage or have the opportunity to interact with your employee, you have the opportunity to engage with those employees and the opportunity to get something special done. So again, quoting from the Gallup finding, of the approximately 100 million people in America who hold full-time jobs, we could argue that number should be higher, but that's for a different presentation. 30 million, about 30%, are engaged. Okay, not a great number, and inspired at work, but 20% are actively disengaged. These people are particularly harmful to your organization, and about 50% of American workers are not engaged. Okay, they're just kind of present, as the study said, but they're not inspired by their work or their managers. Okay, so we've all seen the 20-60-20 rule, what have you. This particular study shows it more as this 50% of these people are not actively engaged, 20% are really in rough shape, and 30% are engaged. Your engaged workforce is directly proportionate to your safety record and results, and that's really what that represents at the bottom of the screen there. So I'm going to skip over a question. In past surveys, I've asked a question, which is what percentage of your workforce do you think demonstrates strong commitment to your company? I've done that several times in past presentations, and frankly, I'm just going to cut right to the chase here because the answers are always the same. What you see there on the screen is that when I ask that question, and again, there are several hundred of you on the line here right now, when I ask that question of a good size audience, this is what I get. The people on the phone collectively would say, well, I think 50 to 75% is the most popular answer. 50 to 75% of my workforce is actively engaged. As you just saw from the Gallup study, they have it at 30%, and according to a study by the Human Capital Institute, it's only about 11% actively engaged workers. So regardless of whether you use the 30% number or the 11% number, the point is that the nexus, the gap between the perception that 60 to 75% of our workforces are engaged and the truth that 11, 20, 30% of our workforces are actually engaged. Unless you work for Disney, and if Disney's on the line, congratulations, you have a very highly engaged workforce, as do a few others, but the vast majority of US companies fall more into that category of 11% or 30%. And again, the difference between that percentage of truly engaged employees and the percentage of engaged employees you could have is where the opportunity lies for improving safety. Still in that same study, and by the way, some people have referenced this study as the 12-question study because people know it by the 12 questions. These are them. I know you can't read all 12 of them on the screen, but again, very easy to find these online if you want to look them up further. I've called out a few of them. And this study, by the way, has been done over, I don't even know, I'd have to look it up. It was 10 or 20 years and 50 million people, something ridiculous over a long period of time. So there's no shortage of input into this study and the results that it got. But in the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing good work. This is an example of one of the questions, and the people that answer this have a chance to rate that answer on a scale as to how highly or lowly they were engaged. My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. Again, we know that people who are more highly engaged at work are happier workers. They form stronger working relationships with their coworkers. As a result, they deliver better customer service. They work safer. They work harder. They work smarter. And the mission or purpose of my company makes me feel that my job is important. Again, people need to feel a sense of importance on the job and the work they're doing, and this study was also meant to expose how important they felt, and as a result of that, to react to that and producing a number that relates to a company's given engagement levels. So the findings, just to kind of draw a conclusion to this, Gallup research found that the top 25% of teams, the best managed, versus the bottom 25% in any workforce, have nearly 50% fewer accidents and have 41% fewer quality defects. What's more, teams in the top 25% versus the bottom 25% cost far less in healthcare costs. So having too few engaged employees means our workplaces are less safe, employees have more quality defects, and disengagement is driving up the country's healthcare costs. This is a paragraph right out of that study. It's obviously a conclusion of the study, and I don't know how any safety professional could ignore this conclusion on such a widely conducted survey and research project. If it were me and I was sitting in your seats and I needed some way to make a case to my boss that we needed to focus more on engagement as a way of getting greater safety, I'd probably lead with this data and walk in and basically make him or her realize that this is really where the rubber meets the road, especially for companies that have already done all the other things. You know, if you're on the phone and you haven't done the baseline things that you need to do to be safer, needless to say, you need to do those first. But if you have good training and training reinforcement, if you have regular meetings and mentors and other basic BBO programs and things like this, if you have these things in place and you've got yourself to a pretty good number, but you can't seem to move the needle beyond that, focusing on employee engagement would be the next place to look. All right, and another reference that I just wanted to throw out here, even though we didn't focus on it in this presentation, time will only permit so much of this research, but another really good one is the Economics of Engagement, which was produced by Human Capital Institute. You can Google that, or you can get that from me as well after the presentation. So I'm going to toggle over here to a connection with wellness, and the reason is simply this. And by the way, this is my stuff on screen. I'll tell you what I mean in a minute. In fact, that little picture there of that guy in a red shirt, that's me. Wellness and safety go hand in hand, and I think most safety professionals are realizing this now, but I also think most aren't exactly sure what to do with that information. I don't know how many people on the phone have heard of a Fitbit. But that bracelet-looking thing on the screen is the Fitbit. There's also Pebbles, and there's something called a Pebble, and other fitness-related stuff. There's pedometers, obviously, that still work just as well as these things do in some ways as well. But I'm actually wearing a Fitbit. There it is right there on my wrist. And that Fitbit is actually tracking my steps and my sleep. It can track my calories taken in, my weight loss, and all these other things. And you can only imagine where this technology might be in the next several years. Safety and wellness. First of all, wellness is a great way to engage workers. Safety is as well, but wellness is a great way to engage them with something that's kind of upbeat. You know, we want to help you lose weight. We want to help you manage your diabetes or your stress level. We want to help you eat healthy. We want to help you with your fitness. These types of things where companies can be interactive with their employees. It's a great place to engage. It's a feel-good place to engage. And as an example, a number of employees in my company are wearing these Fitbits as well. And what you see on the far left-hand side of the screen is what it looks like on my computer screen. Again, probably too small for you to see, but that chart on the far left, the green one, is showing me how many steps I had that given day. It was 18,000. On the right, it's showing me on the right bottom, it's showing me my sleep and how many minutes of restful sleep I got versus how many times I woke up and how much restlessness I had while sleeping. And we know that, you know, there's a connection between obesity, which I may or may not be, but sleep apnea, tired driving is a safety issue. Take your pick. So when you have a connection on the wellness side, you really have a connection on the safety side as well. The screen in the middle there, by the way, is showing what it looks like when I get emails from them periodically to show my performance on a weekly basis. It ties me in with all the other Fitbit users so I can see my progress relative to them. And on my mobile device, because so much of the world is mobile these days, again, I can see real time how many steps I've taken, how many calories I've burned, how far I've gone. Great tools to engage the workforce, great connection back to safety, not just wellness, and an opportunity to really extend the connection with the employee. So who owns engagement? And again, I need to go through this presentation with some pace. Some of these slides are topics unto themselves. But who owns engagement? Very often I get to this point in a discussion, and you know, from past webinars or past sessions at trade shows or sessions that I've delivered live to live audiences, and I get these questions from safety professionals saying, well, how is it my responsibility? You know, you're talking about employee engagement, you're talking about all these things that relate to employees. Who should own that? Shouldn't that be HR? Shouldn't it be operations? Shouldn't the C-suite be responsible for telling us if we need to do these things? My answer to the question is simply reality is what it is. And probably more than likely nobody's going to do it unless you show them the way. If the connection to safety, if you have a safety sensitive workforce, is that strong, in other words, if they really truly need to pay attention to safety as one of the primary functions on the job, then the safety manager owns engagement. And frankly, once you prove the concept, you'll have other people, probably operations and HR, asking you how you did it and wanting to glom on as well. Social media. What I thought I'd do also, just to reinforce some of the points I'm making, is to toggle into some real life social media conversations and show you, the types of questions that are being asked. These are all, by the way, from the very recent past. They're in the last month or so. These questions have been asked online, and so much of what we do and data exchanges on social media, I thought it'd be interesting to just kind of check out some of these questions and tell you how I think employee engagement can be used to address these. So here's the first one. This was an OSHA group, specifically through LinkedIn, and it says, and actually I have to get closer to my own screen here. So, are your workers trained to recognize hazards effectively, and how confident are you in that process? So, how are your workers trained to recognize hazards, and how do you reinforce that training? All right. The one thing is, again, most companies have training. The question is, how extensive is that training, and how useful is it when they really need to know that information, at the particular moment they need to know it. The main thing I would suggest is this: if you have a recognition reward program that's built properly, you should be able to use a quiz tool built into that recognition reward platform that reinforces that training by asking the right questions at the right time. So to give you a real life example, in a safety program we did carbon monoxide poisoning training, and we needed to make sure that the workforce internalized that training. And it's one thing if you ask them 5 minutes after they walk out of the classroom. It's another thing if you go back and ask them 6 months later. And so we put up a quiz within the recognition reward platform that asks them 5 questions about the carbon monoxide poisoning training they got. And 3 months, 6 months, 9 months later, we see if they still remember it. We give them points when they get the questions right. We send them back to the study material when they get it wrong, and we let them even come back and change their answers and still get it right if they want to. All we care about is that they actually know the right way to ventilate a room and the right way to recognize the signs of carbon monoxide poisoning. So training reinforcement through a quiz tool or something similar, perhaps even with a survey tool. Next question says, I'm curious if anyone has any point of views on online safety training versus classroom training, and any thoughts on options would be great. Again, a very current question from somebody participating in an online group, specifically on LinkedIn. I just talked about training and its ability to reinforce, or surveys and quizzes and their ability to reinforce training. To the specific question about classroom training versus online training, I would say the following. I realize, practically speaking, there needs to be online training in some environments. Wherever it isn't necessary, wherever, frankly, you can afford to put a person in the classroom, it's a face-to-face interaction that can have huge upside benefit. The ability for somebody to retain and remain and learn and retain that information when trained in a face-to-face situation is substantial. However, in situations where it's simply not pragmatic to do so, the one thing that you should be able to do is, even if you're putting them through online training sessions, I would have a person in that room every 45 minutes to an hour after every section is completed to go through the Q&A with them. Okay, so even if it's not practical to have them in there straight through, let them do the training, but then follow up with them so they're not just stuck in a room for 8 hours and trained in a vacuum. That, together with the follow-up quizzes and frankly surveys to get their feedback on the training tools, will be much more beneficial long-term in that training process. Next question, what is the simplest and fastest way EH&S relays messages to a broad workforce? So if you build it, they will come. And it, in this particular case, would be the central platform, the central hub, if you will, software as a service for the recognition reward program. To use one case study as an example, we had a program we built for a very large industrial company, 20,000 safety sensitive employees. And those employees, once we built this recognition reward program, began coming to a site 20 times more than they were going to their own intranet site, right? When we first launched that program, it was about 8 or 9 years ago, we had managers in the company say, well, half of our people can't get online, half of them don't even have an email address. We knew that wasn't right, but we built an offline component to the program anyway, and then we launched the online program, and lo and behold, 93% of all people participating in the program were doing so online, and 98% of all award orders were coming in online. The company was blown away. They asked us, to look into it further, which we did. We conducted surveys to find out how people were getting online. We found out about 70% were getting online through their home, which was below the national average, but far higher than the company realized. And the other 15 to 25% were getting on through a friend's coworker, or from a wife's work, or from their kids, from an internet cafe or a library. Take your pick. But they were finding a way to get online. So we know once we have a web hub fully customized for our safety message, that we can get these people to come there, partially because of what's in it for them, points and prizes, but also partially because they want to see how well their division's performing. They want to read the case studies and news stories and see the mantra of the company in lights. And we know exactly what they click on when they're there. As an added benefit to this company, the one I mentioned specifically, once they saw how much traffic the rewards program was getting, we actually made the path to the rewards program go through the intranet site so that they would get all that traffic to the location where their 401k and their health benefits and all that other information was already located. So it was a nice ancillary benefit to having that path go back through their intranet site as well. Another question here, and actually it's just a statement, but I think I can read it as a question. Stale culture. And I'll take that to mean, what do I do if I have a stale culture? Here again, everybody's looking for a dynamic platform. We know that if you hang up OSHA poster on the wall, it doesn't get a lot of attention. It's not the type of thing that's going to capture people's attention or hold their attention. And frankly, it's the same thing with a lot of training and other types of materials. Not that it's not important, not that you can't present it in a way that might be engaging, but ultimately, if it's done in a similar way over and over again, your culture will get stale. The best thing you can have at your fingertips is a tool that's flexible and can be used at a moment's notice to add a little sizzle back to your program. So, offering double bonus points during National Safety Month in the month of June, as an example, is going to catch their attention. Offering double bonus points for whoever has the best safety suggestion of the month. Okay, and doing so in an environment where Jane Doe, when she makes the best suggestion, is recognized and her picture is put on the website and she's shown receiving her bonus points for doing so. We've done safety slogan contests, again, all through an automated process, online or offline, and we've judged the top slogans. We've picked the top 10, a safety committee would pick the top 10, let's say, and then you put the top 10 on the website and you ask people to vote on it, and the number one vote getter becomes the safety slogan for the next 12 months for the company. And it's put onto t-shirts and travel mugs and mouse pads, right? And used in that way. These things do generate interest, along with some other stuff that I'll show you here in the future, ways of celebrating safety in a way that it's a little goes beyond the mundane and really, again, captures their attention. And last one here, this question specifically asks, and I'll just paraphrase, if safety programs or safety incentive program can be used to for other purposes as well, and if so, does it dilute the message? So if we were to build a safety recognition reward program and then HR were to come knocking, or operations or what have you, and by the way, this has happened many times in many of my programs, once we have that traffic that I talked about before, once you have the needle moving results that I talked about before, and you can actually prove you're getting a safer workforce, once that's in place, you will find that all of a sudden the operations guy who couldn't find a penny before wants to know how he can use it to work on quality. And you find that HR has an initiative, has been told to really boost their initiative for a wellness program, and they want to know if they can tie in somehow to your platform. I think my answer to the question is this: yes, it can actually be an enhancement to have all of these programs, along with maybe a service award program. Most companies have these awards for 5 and 10 and 15 years on the job. If you tie them in to your safety program the right way, it can be an enhancement, because the participants are earning more points, they're being engaged more frequently, and chances are it's going to have them a little more in tune with the messages coming through. The one thing I'd say is make sure that these other departments that want to latch onto your program don't do so by diluting the message of safety on the program itself. And there are ways to do that as well. There are separate landing pages and separate materials that can be used to make sure that you don't lose your message in theirs. So I talked about engagement, and I talked about recognition opportunities, and frankly, the results of that Gallup survey, which essentially mean don't waste an opportunity to engage, right? Every opportunity you have for a face-to-face encounter with your employee is an opportunity for engagement, and if it goes by with nothing more than the, good morning, George type of recognition, you've lost an opportunity. So here's something that we frequently do and work with our clients, which is to produce a safety kit. And when I say a safety kit, the inside these boxes, so this one's made in the shape of a safety triangle that carries the branding of the company that we did this for. The handle you see sticking through that triangular box is the handle of a canvas tool bag, very heavyweight canvas tool bag. Inside that tool bag was, among other things, I think a hammer with a laser engraved logo on it, a hat, lapel pins, patches, travel mug, sunglasses, just a really nice, I don't know, I think, $100 retail value kit that was given out to everybody who had a perfectly safe year. But as important, or maybe even more important than what was in the kit, was what was on the outside of the box. You can see in the one in the background there, probably best, that there's a message on there in writing. That message was from the president of the company. And you also see pictures on the side of the box. Those are actual pictures of their own employees. So rather than just giving them some stuff, some bling, what was given to them was a kit, a box. And we actually found out after the fact that most people save the boxes, which is particularly encouraging. And the box says, from the president of the company, says, "Thank you for making us the safest company in our industry. Your hard work and dedication has," so on and so forth, right? That message resonates with employees. And what you see on the right in the pictures are employees coming across the stage in a once-a-year annual event. And probably tough to see, but somebody in the lower picture is holding up a camera and taking a picture. We actually attended and videotaped these events, and you have spouses in the crowd taking pictures of their husbands or wives going across the stage, shaking the hand of the local district manager and receiving their award, and then going back to their table to see what's in it. This is the type of thing I'm talking about from an engagement, from a recognition, from a reward, from a creating buzz type standpoint, and the long-term value of it is cannot be underestimated. So I'm going to ask the next poll question here. Again, you can read it for yourself and go ahead and check the answers as soon as you're ready. But if you have any concerns about implementing a safety recognition rewards program, what are they? And the reason I ask if you have concerns, because needless to say, to hear me describe it, it's all good, and it is. But there are challenges out there, and we know for a fact that people recognize those challenges, and at times it actually stops companies from deploying these programs. We also know that very often the people I speak to, which are very often the type of people that are signed up for this webinar, recognize and realize that these programs will be beneficial. But of course, you have to go back and ask for the money or ask for the commitment to do it. And we know that we run into challenges there. So what is it that concerns you about these, if anything? Is it accident hiding? Is it the difficulty of replacing cash or cash-like programs, many of which exist in the world right now of safety, or the cost of the program itself, taxation issues, strain on internal resources, or for that matter, lack of management support. And you guys are good. You're clicking away, so I'm going to go ahead and push you the results because they're coming in fast and furious. Accident and injury hiding comes in number 1, followed by cost of program, strain on internal resources, and lack of management support. And again, we have, I don't know, several hundred people answer this question real quickly here, so real good statistical data. By the way, anybody who wants a copy of the presentation can have it after the fact. And there's the copy that ISHN will have right away, but there's also going to be a version that'll have these results, the results of the surveys you're taking embedded right in it, right? So 44% concerned about accident and injury hiding. I don't blame you. We all know about OSHA and the rules and regulations they have, and needless to say, nobody wants to get on the wrong side of those rules. Here's the thing, and you'll see some of this in the last few slides of what we're going to cover here. When properly built, I'm going to say this, and Dr. Michaels can pick up the phone and call me right after I'm done if he wants to, but when properly built, recognition reward programs are actually something that OSHA embraces, not the other way around. And they actually work with behavior-based observation programs. They work with VPP programs. I realize you can't yell back at me over the phone. I've had people in trade shows say to me, no, the V and VPP is voluntary. I get you. But as long as you build it the right way, and believe it or not, we can actually align with OSHA, with a government organization on this. If you build the program the right way, you get the results you're looking for, and you get no accident and injury hiding. And I'll cover a little bit more in a few slides. But the one thing I would say is this: the number one thing to know is to reward individuals for individual behaviors, but communicate group goals. Okay, tell the group what you're looking for. We're looking for a 10% reduction in the East Coast plants on accidents. Tell the entire group, or all the workers there, what you want, but don't reward the group for group behavior. Reward the individual for individual behavior, and particularly proactive behaviors, and you'll not have anything that OSHA disagrees with, and you'll have an effective program. The cost of the program, absolutely, of course, that's going to be a concern. The normal return on a program like this is 4 to 1. On average, you're looking at a 4 to 1 return. And that's very often just on hard dollars, not on soft dollars as well. You have to spend to save, but there are countless examples of companies that have these programs in place that have seen their loss pick drop off a cliff in terms of spending as a result of having these programs in place. But it takes a little leap of faith in order to prove that first, and once you've proven the concept, you can spread that word further throughout the organization. Strain on internal resources, absolutely should outsource these programs. I know it's self-serving. I'm not hiding what I do for a living, but even if it's not me, go with an expert who knows how to run these programs and can do a good job for you, and don't try to dump the execution on your own internal resources. And lack of management support, that's the one where, again, you got to prove the concept for them. And if you can't prove it with a big budget program that does the whole country in one shot, then get a little bit of money someplace. Talk a little bit more about this in a minute as well, and go do a trial program in one location, one plant, prove that it works, and then make it bigger on a regional or a national basis. So best practices, and I'll skim through some of this because as I ramble on, I tend to cover some of these points ahead of time. So we're going to talk about in this section opportunities for engagement. Again, quickly, engagement by generation, just touching on the different ages of the workforce, communication as an imperative, and then brands that motivate, and the incentive do's and don'ts. So first up, best practices, opportunities for engagement. So, you can see there on the screen for yourself, safety accomplishments and health and wellness programs, training, all these things we've already talked about. According to a study by Gallup, different study, 86% of engaged employees said they would characterize their interactions with coworkers as always positive, right? So when engaged employees, again, the 30% from early on in the presentation, when those people are asked, they characterize their interactions with coworkers as positive, right? If you have that, set safety aside for a second. If you have that, you have better customer service. You have better internal service, right? You have more of a community, and everything feeds off of that. Then it just gets better and better. So again, creating engagement is a path to safety, but frankly, it's a path to so many other things, which is why if you prove the concept and then HR wants a piece of it, then HR can kick in as well and help support the program. Engagement by generation. Just threw up a few pictures here of different age groups. Here's the thing: every generation reacts to it, right? My mother and father, who are in their 70s, are big collectors of their airline miles and their credit card points, and are driven by. My father's driven by a free round of golf here or there, given to him through one of the programs he's in. And that's fine. My wife, I told you about earlier, I'm 48. She's in her early 40s. She's driven, as am I, by the points we earn in some of our programs and the recognition reward side of things. And we certainly know that our kids are. Not just Gen X or Gen Y, but even millennials, our kids or our grandkids are growing up in a world, and you may not like it. You may not like it, and I'm sorry if you don't, but all I'm here to do is tell you how to get the most out of it. Our kids are growing up in a world where everybody gets a trophy. I'm actually the president of my local little league, and everybody who plays in that final game gets a trophy, not just the all-star. In fact, even the team that loses the final game gets a trophy. And if I didn't, the baseball moms would be all over me, right? But more so than that, particularly in a web-enabled world, we know our kids right now, they get badges for everything. If you don't know what a badge is, you can find out very quickly. Just ask anybody under the age of 20. Anything they're doing online is giving them badges, and those badges are essentially an online currency. They're used to being rewarded. But more so than just that, they want, particularly millennials or younger Gen Ys, they want feedback. We get this from every study. Go read any study on the subject. They want feedback, they want recognition, and frankly, they're more likely to leave a job where they don't get it than they are to stick around. Some best practices, a real simple thought here on the communication side of things. It's a four-step way of looking at communication. The message has to get through, right? So you can have the best message in the world, and you can stick it on a poster, and you can hang it on the wall, and if it's the wrong wall that nobody walks by, it's of no value, right? So you have to get the message through, electronically and print, both ideally, but no matter what, you got to make sure it reaches the target. The message needs to be understood. Okay, we got the message through, but guess what? It made perfect sense to you and no sense to anyone else. All right, so make sure that it's understood. Use a committee of employees to make sure that they understand it before you push it out to everyone in your company. All communication avenues need to be utilized. It's old world, printed materials and company newsletters and new world, social media and Twitter and everything else under the sun. If you don't have somebody on staff, if you're big enough to afford somebody who can help you out with social media and you don't have that person yet, you're making a mistake. Find some 20-something out there who understands social media, bring them on board and have them help you get the message out the door. And it must be measured. One of the biggest mistakes companies make is they don't measure their message, they don't measure the results, I should say, and as a result, they don't know what they're getting from their communication campaigns. So get it through, make sure it's understood, use every possible way of getting it out there, and measure, measure, measure. Brands that motivate, the other thing I tell you, when I did an entire presentation just on this topic that was very well received, you need to put a brand name on your program. And you see some of the brand names on the right there are brand names from actual programs that we've done. But regardless of whether it's Safety First or Take Action Rewards or triple or dedicated to safety, all of these different program brand names are meant to convey to the audience, your workers, how seriously you take safety. If you just throw out some scratch card, frankly, with no branding on it, you've basically said to your employee, I didn't have a lot of time to put some thought into this, but here's something you might consider beneficial, right? No good. The slide before that talked about communication, this one talks about branding, and the two go hand in hand together. If you're going to put your safety program out there, and you should put a brand name on it, and you need to communicate it as a brand. People respond to brands. Okay, we all aware of generic products in a grocery store. You're aware of that black and white bag of chips that just says potato chips on it. Okay, but I think only 3% of all products purchased in grocery stores are generics. The rest are people buying Lay's potato chips and Coca-Cola, and because they respond to brand names and they trust them. And the same thing is true of your safety program. And best practices for incentive programs, do's and don'ts. And I'm near the end, and I want to get this thing done and get to some Q&A because I know I see a lot of questions rolling through. So I'm not going to rehash all this, but real quickly, management support is a must, obviously. Involve employees in the design. Communicate all the time, continually. It needs to be ubiquitous. Use face-to-face whenever you can. Use tangible rewards. I've done an entire presentation on cash as a bad motivator. Can't go through all that right now, but it's eminently forgettable. Cash and cash substitutes are eminently forgettable. By the way, as a quick aside, I know I mentioned earlier the gas example where my wife is getting discounts from the gas station, and gas is essentially cash. And so if it's okay there, why isn't it okay here? It's okay in that environment because that's a commodity for a commodity. Okay, so groceries are a commodity, and giving you a discount off of gas is a commodity, and those two can work fine together. But safety is not a commodity. Okay, it's something that really requires their attention and their full attention. And if you're giving them cash or gas cards or Home Depot cards as a reward for those things, frankly, you're not getting the bang for your buck, because that cannot convey the message that you need. The same message that a person gets when he saves his points for 6 months to a year and then gets a Callaway golf club. okay, or she saves her points for a long period of time and goes on and gets herself a Coach pocketbook. Those types of tangible rewards will keep them coming back and will make them have them remember the program itself. Cash and cash substitutes will not, and that's part of the don'ts that I just alluded to. And the last couple of don'ts there, and by the way, while I'm talking about that, you can check off this budget survey question. This is the end of the presentation. But the last couple of don'ts, and this goes back to OSHA, were don't use exceedingly high value awards, and don't pull a name out of a hat. Don't use the element of chance. So many of your grandfather's programs, if you will, safety incentive programs, were built around that simple structure. In fact, if there's a sign in front of your building that says X number of days in accident and injury free, in my world, you should tear it down, because again, you're putting the entire group together. If that sign says 999 days accident and injury free, okay, and the next day or that day some guy rolls his ankle or puts a dent in a forklift, does he want to tell everybody that there was an accident and have that sign go from 999 to 0? No. That's what OSHA doesn't like, and a similar problem exists when you throw everybody's name in a hat and pull out one winner and give them a pickup truck. OSHA doesn't like it. Frankly, it doesn't work good. It's a waste of money, and there are better ways to go. So on this last poll question, I'll push the results out to you now. I've asked this question for a number of years, and I think it's primarily for your edification. It's interesting for you guys to see where your fellow coworkers or your fellow safety professionals are from a budget standpoint in terms of spending. So here we go. We think more than likely the budget is going to increase from this year, from last year to this year. So 24% over 16% expected to be a slight increase in the budget spending from one year to the next. And obviously the majority of people are in the middle. That's actually positive. So we have a slight uptick of people thinking that their spending on safety this year is going to go up. Some indication that the economy is getting better, and again that our managers are recognizing that spending money to save money is the way to go. From previous years, if you can read that, and if not, again, you'll be easier once you get a copy of the presentation. But this blue bar at the bottom here, okay, well this section, that blue one right there, the darker blue, that's 2009, and in 2009, the vast majority of people that responded thought their budgets were going to decrease. That very, very small blue bar at the bottom of the section that says increase was the small percentage of people that thought it was going to increase. And so as you go through, if you look at the decrease section, you see that that over the years, in something of a trend line, people have gone from 2009 till today feeling better about their budgets. And again, you can get all this actual raw data in the final copy of the presentation that we push out. So if we will now, we can jump over, Dave, to the Q&A.
Thanks very much, Brian, for a really excellent presentation about what motivates employees to be engaged in their organizations. And I certainly know, as editor of a safety magazine, that engagement issue is top of mind with many safety professionals in 2014. And so much of your content was spot on. I appreciate it, Brian. And let's get to some of the questions and also some statements that I'd like you to respond to, Brian. First question is actually a statement I'd be interested in your response to. Incentive programs also sometimes become expectations rather than something that needs to be worked for. What do you do when an incentive program, I guess you could say, becomes looked at as sort of an entitlement or an expectation rather than a reward?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Be honest with you, and so I'm 26 years. This week will be my 26 years on the job. So I say this with 26 years of experience. The majority of times that somebody, that a program is viewed as an expectation, the majority of time that you see that happen, there's a flaw in the structure of the program. Now, first and foremost, the flaw is something I was just talking about. Cash, or something that's just the same as cash, is very often viewed as an entitlement. And frankly, it's one of the #1 reasons we don't give cash. One of the main reasons, frankly, is it's not memorable. If I gave you a $50 reward 5 weeks ago, probably, for being safe on the job, I doubt you can tell me what you did with it. Okay. If you saved up your points and went out and got a fishing pole because you just love fishing, I can ask you 5 years from now where you get the fishing pole and you'll know. So one of the main reasons we don't use cash is it's not memorable. But the other main reason we don't use cash is that it's viewed as an entitlement. Okay. And so a person might sit there and say, well, I make $34,500 a year and I get $500 bonus for this and I get X number of dollars in my safety program. To them, that's all. They lump it all together and they consider it all. So they say, okay, I got to make $37,500. To them, that's their compensation for doing their work, not for being safer or proactively safe on the job, just for doing their work. And so if all of a sudden one day the company says, you know what, we're not getting a lot of bang for our buck on that safety program, and they're probably not if they're giving away cash and they try to take it away, there's definitely a blowback effect and people can feel like you pick their pocket. And so again, reason number 9, why not to use cash as a reward in these programs. It needs to be different than their everyday job. But if you build it properly and you reward, there's no entitlement to receiving a reward for being the guy who chose to take the AED training, right? For being the guy who joined a safety committee, who mentored a new employee, who joined a wellness program, who came up with a great safety suggestion, right? Any of these things and a million more I can give you as examples, who went above and beyond for safety, you know, that type of thing. Those people don't feel entitled when they get rewarded. They feel recognized and rewarded. And the thing is, if they didn't make a safety suggestion the next month, they're never going to walk up to someone and say, how come I didn't get rewarded this month? Last month I got rewarded. Well, you made a great suggestion last month. So most of the program should be built around that proactive behavior. And honestly, if it's built properly, as I said, it won't be an entitlement issue.
Very good. Next question. Could you, Brian, give some more insight or explanation into what you mean by tangible incentives?
Sure. Well, it's the things I'm referring to, right? It's the golf club and the fishing pole and the TV set and the mountain bike and the bass fishing boat and take your pick. There are other things that are more subtle as well. Most of our programs have digital downloads. And digital downloads are very interesting because they mop up, you know, small numbers of points, but they're very tangible as well. My kid loves music, you know, for him to be able to, and my employees love music. So for them to be able to go in and redeem a very small number of points and get the latest and greatest song, or download a movie or a video game or things like that, those are tangible awards as well. But it needs to be something that again is memorable, something you're not going to forget. The Xbox is not going to be forgotten. The pocketbook, right? The TV, the DVD player. And to a certain extent, travel rewards as well. The things that are forgettable are, and forget about cash. I know I've already beat that horse, but I've talked about gas cards, but even like a Home Depot card, and no offense to Home Depot, they're a good company. Okay, I shop there as well. But if I give you a Home Depot card tomorrow, okay, and I say this is not a tangible reward, and here's why I say that. And by the way, my company offers them, but I still say it's not tangible, and frankly, it doesn't give you the bang for your buck. If I give you a card, like a Home Depot, or you can fill in the blank on some other company, more than likely, what do? If you're like me or my wife, you go home and you put it on your gift card shelf, which is on my desk at home, okay? And more than likely, the average card that hits that shelf stays there anywhere from 3 to 6 months or sometimes years, okay? When I go home and I grab that $50 Home Depot card and I go use it, I'm probably not ever remembering where I got it from. When I go to Home Depot and I spend it, and I put $100 worth of stuff in my cart and I check out, when I check out, I only had a $50 card, which means I have to dig into my wallet and pull out $50 in cash or credit on my own. It won't even feel like it was a reward at that point because I had to actually use my own money to finish off the transaction. And what did I get with it? More than likely, mulch, light bulbs, batteries, right? Motor oil. And there's nothing memorable about a bag of mulch. You're not going to walk home that day and say, oh, look at that mulch in my front yard. I got that as a reward in my safety program. If the reward itself, if you lose the memory factor, okay, that tangible rewards produce, if you get rid of that by just taking the simple road out and giving them gift cards or cash equivalents, you've lost one of the biggest opportunities to make your program a success.
Very good. Next question, and this one certainly is important to, I think, everyone listening in to you today, Brian. If you could go back and touch again on the topic of how OSHA views incentive programs and how to ensure that one's incentive program is viewed as acceptable in OSHA's eyes.
Sure. Dr. Michaels has issued a statement, and I don't have it in this presentation. I've had it in others in the past. He said it several times, but to paraphrase it, I think he uses the terminology properly built incentive programs, okay, are okay. I'm again paraphrasing here, that there are programs that usually starts off with there are incentive programs we really don't like, and those programs do this, that, or the other thing, but properly built incentive programs, are fine. Again, paraphrase, please don't say I quoted them exactly, but anybody who wants that can send me an email after the fact, and I'll send you the link to those comments. What they don't like, and the beauty of this is, because very often, very often you come up against government regulations and you shake your head and you say, who came up with that idea? But they got it right, actually, believe it or not. They got it right because a recognition reward program that is built on guilting people into hiding accidents. And by guilt, I gave the example earlier, 999 days without an accident. Let's say that you were to offer everybody in your workforce, you said, listen, if everybody is safe for the entire quarter, everybody in plant 14 is going to get $100 or $100 worth of points, right? And you've been there for 89 days and the plant is safe, and then you have an accident, all right, of some sort, something you could conceivably hide, but you shouldn't. You might hide it. Not because you're afraid you're not going to get your 50 points, but because the other 500 guys who work in your plant aren't going to get their 50 points. OSHA doesn't like that, and I don't blame them. It's negative reinforcement, frankly, and even if it could work in some environments, it works primarily or more often than not by getting people to hide an accident. You're far better off by saying, we want everybody in plant 14 to achieve a 5%, an 8%, a 15% reduction in claims year over year or for the first quarter. Go through that year rewarding the individuals who go above and beyond for safety. Right? Again, those people who join the safety committees, who mentor the new employees, who are observed wearing their PPE properly. And you can go on and on with the examples, right? All of these proactive safe things, reward those individuals for those proactive safe behaviors, reward them individually for what they did, communicate the group goals, communicate the group results. Congratulations, we had an 8% drop in claims. You guys are great. Nice job. And the individuals that were most responsible for that would have been rewarded along the way. OSHA has no problem with that type of program, and thankfully, it's the best format for a success as well.
Very good. Next question. How are you, Brian, connecting loyalty and engagement together? What is the connection between loyalty and engagement?
So if I wish this was a two-way conversation, but I'll ask a question. Name something that you can answer in your own head here. Name something that you're good at that you're not engaged in, right? Can you think of something in your life that you say to yourself, boy, I've never been engaged or even at least been interested in golf, but boy, I'm good at it. Same thing with fishing, same thing with any sport you can think of. How about math? You sit there and say to yourself, boy, I was never engaged in math in high school, but man, I'm good at math. It's probably not going to be the case. So in order to be good at something, you need to be engaged in something. In order to be a good customer of anything, again, I don't care whether it's a casino or a grocery store or anything in between. Okay, I took my kids, and my oldest is 14 now, but when they were younger, I took them to Disney World. I get emails from Walt Disney World all the time. And actually, up until recently, I would never even delete them. I'd probably save them because they were offers to come back with discounts on tours and bonus structures and what have you. So the loyalty that they're getting from me as a customer, and we went there several times over the years, and the loyalty that the other examples I've given you from grocery stores to restaurant chains and what have you that they're getting from me is because I'm engaged. I'm listening to their message. Okay, I probably got similar emails from, I don't even know, Six Flags. Okay, but I've never been to a Six Flags in my life. Why? I'm not engaged in Six Flags. I don't have that same connection to them because they've gone out of their way when they were faced with an opportunity to make a connection with me, to engage with me. I've ended up becoming a more loyal customer as a result of it. And it's the only point I was trying to make in that whole section was that the same human emotion that makes those programs so successful, that has spending in, I think, $85 billion a year spent on consumer loyalty programs. The reason that money is spent is because it's successful, and it's the same human emotions that are at play in your workforce that can make them more loyal, more engaged as well, and make the safety message get through.
Very good. Next question. What are your thoughts, Brian, about setting up an engagement, motivation, and reward program for off-the-job safety?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. In more mature programs, it's usually not job one, because job one is to get a program that you just described out the door and working properly for the workers themselves. You got to make sure that you get input and you get it built properly and make sure it creates the buzz and you start moving the needle, internally in safety. But once you have that working in your internal environment, and you have a successful program that's clearly going to be around for years and years and years, and to the great benefit of the company, you're always going to be looking for new ways to promote that program and to make it that much more engaging and to get it outside the confines of your company. And we've had great success doing things like kids coloring contests, right? So we have industrial customers where we have pictures of mommy and daddy at work, and we put up a coloring contest where a parent can just simply on the reward site click and download a black and white picture of again, mom or dad doing their job, give it to their kid, 2-year-old, 5-year-old, 8-year-old, whatever, have them color the picture and send it in. We take those colored pictures, and by the way, it could also be mom and dad in a wellness related, biking and doing things that are healthy for them as well. Those pictures come in, we usually take them, scan them, and adorn the website with them in some sort of a scrolling graphic. It lights up the website like a Christmas tree. It looks great. We know it's one of the most clicked on things. We can tell what people click on, obviously, when we measure website statistics. We know it's one of the most clicked on things in the presentation, or on the website, I should say. And so we know that it gets through to them, and it helps us push a message into the home about ladder safety, right? About driving safety. We've got great testimonials from people in certain programs that were driving home from work on their own time in their own car, who sent back a testimonial that said that the driving section safety training they had was particularly beneficial. And one guy in one program that jumps to mind who said he thinks he would have been killed, but he just come out of intersection safety training. Intersection safety training reinforced the idea of taking look left and right again when the light turns green. He did it, and somebody had blown through a red light coming in the other direction. A drunk driver actually who crashed into a telephone pole on the other side of the street. He thinks he would have been dead if he hadn't just come through the intersection safety training. That message from him, unsolicited, put up on our website, clicked on thousands of times by his fellow coworkers. Very powerful message.
I think we have time for a couple more questions, Brian. Here's one that's relevant to today's economy and today's workforce. Do you have any special tips for engaging a workforce that is largely made up of part-time employees?
It certainly can be tricky. The part-timers, I mean, first of all, many of the same tactics will work, but part-timers can definitely be engaged. It's just a question of knowing the limitations of what that means. So if part-time means that they work 2 days a week, and they're off the other 3 days a week, then needless to say, it's a question of of knowing when your toolbox talks are going to be, right? And using those toolbox talks, assuming they still take place, to engage that workforce. If as a result of being part-time, they don't participate in the normal safety meetings, well, there must be some way to get to them. That's an example where I'd say, tell me more. Tell me more about what your part-timers are like. Are they web enabled? Do they go through training? We've had companies where workers come in and they work like a 3-month stint, and then very often these were stevedores as an example, and they tend to bounce from company to company because they're controlled by the dock workers themselves, are controlled by the unions. And so they'll be working for one company for 1 month and another company for another month. And we came up with a great plan for addressing that workforce as well. There's always a way, but you have to wrap your head around it. Frankly, typically one of the best things to do is to get the employees involved in the conversation. And you can get some great ideas from the part-time workers as to how it would be possible to reward them on the job.
Very good. That leads into what will be our last question, Brian. Nice connection. How do you feel about doing an employee survey to find out what employees would like for an incentive?
Yeah, I feel great about it. That's exactly what we'd recommend. I mean, it's initially that might come after the program's built. Before the program's built, while the program is being built, you're going to want to grab a committee or two of employees and get them into a room. You have to give them some direction. I want to be clear about that. You just don't want to bring a bunch of employees in a room and say, tell us what you want in a recognition reward program, because you'll get the moon and the stars and a bunch of stuff that's not going to work, and frankly, a bunch of things that are on the don't list from this presentation. So what you want to do is bring them into a room and engage them in a discussion about the rewards program that you're going to create for them, but do so with a framework they need to stay within, right? So structure that meeting so that we don't steer away off the tracks in terms of what they want, right? Next thing you know, they all want cash, and they want greenback cash handed to them on the shop floor. But once you've got them steered in the right direction, then get their input on any number of different things. And that's really the initial survey from a structure standpoint, from the types of awards they might want and what have you. Now, once the program's up and running, yeah, online or offline surveys during the program are one of the best ways to keep track of how you're doing. Again, I think it's 22% of companies typically in a major study measure the results of their program. That's a joke. If there's a room for improvement, it's right there. Any company launching any program, even if it's one that I don't think would work well, should measure it, right? Because how are they going to know it's not working well unless they measure it and test it alongside something else? So Surveys are the best way to do that. Launch a survey before you launch a new program. Ask everybody a bunch of questions on a scale of 1 to 10. How safe do you think this company is? If the score comes in at an average of 6.5, launch that survey again 3 months in, 6 months in, a year and a half in, 2 years in. And if you've gone from a perception of safety from 6.5 to a perception of safety at 8.2, you've probably gone a long way towards creating a safer company.
Well, folks, we're into overtime here. Our hour is up. So please join me in thanking Brian Galanick for an excellent presentation, excellent off-the-cuff answers to your questions. Brian covered a lot of ground in 60 minutes. And we thank him, and also let's thank our sponsor again, All-Star Incentive Marketing. As you exit today's webinar, again, please take a couple of minutes to complete our survey. We strongly welcome your detailed comments to help us serve you better in future webinars. If you have any additional questions or comments, don't hesitate to contact me, Dave Johnson, at johnsond@bnpmedia.com. Please visit webinars.ishn.com for an archive of Brian's presentation today, as well as information about our upcoming webinar events. Again, we certainly appreciate your time and attention this afternoon and hope you have found Brian's webinar to be a valuable experience. I'm sure you have. Thank you.